I know, a little delay. Hello and welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday, live for August 18th. I'm your host, David Michalek. I'm a consumer credit expert with almost 9 years experience focused on credit repair and credit education. I've conducted over 10,000 one-on-one credit consultations, which have resulted in over 1 million disputes and tens of thousands of inaccurate accounts being deleted from credit reports. I'm very much looking forward to sharing with you what I've learned on our live weekly Q&A calls. And we do these every Wednesday on both our Facebook page and YouTube channel at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So welcome. Please take a second, introduce yourself if you haven't. Let me know where you're from. And also let me know if this is your first time joining us. So you've heard me say this before. Our credit report and scores play an enormous role in so many areas of our lives. Our insurance companies, landlord, mortgage broker, banks, even our employers are looking at our credit report to see how we honor our obligations. Now, having great credit is mandatory, and it's mandatory because credit reports have become our adult report cards. They tell a story. They tell our story of what we do when we are entrusted with credit. Now, it can be a plus, it can be a big minus. Now, for those of us who it's a big minus, that's why we do these live weekly Q&A sessions. So on today's live, I'm going to answer your questions about Credit Versio, about the dispute process, about credit scores, whatever you like. This is your 30, 45 minutes, however long we decide to go today. Now, normally, I usually kick this off by going over the most popular questions of the week. But I'm not going to do that today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend some time clarifying what credit repair is and what credit repair is not. There's a lot of myths, there's a lot of misunderstandings about this whole process, how it works, what to do, what not to do. And a lot of that, I believe, has to do with the fact that none of us are ever pulled aside in high school or maybe our first year of college, and nobody explained to us, one, how this whole thing works, how credit works, how credit reports work, scores work, and just as importantly, how important this is going to be in our lives. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about some of these myths. I want to talk about the repair process in a little bit of detail. And thank you, Pon. Welcome. If this is your first time, that's great. Rodney, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And while I'm doing this, feel free to post your question. If it's not a question that's really in line with what we're talking about, don't worry about it. Like I said, I'm on your dime. Ask whatever question that you want. So let's start off with a couple of things. First of all, by law, accounts have to be accurate and verifiable on your credit report. So when we're talking about the information on our credit report, maybe it's a collection, a charge off, maybe it's a credit card or a car loan in good standing, maybe a mortgage. It doesn't matter what it is. Under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, now if you're doing some credit repair, if you've researched this a little bit, you're probably familiar with some of the terminology I'm going to throw at you today. The FCRA, that's the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that was an amendment of the Consumer Credit Protection Act of 1968. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act came out in 1970. So why am I bringing that up? The reason for that is, hi LaTanya, thank you so much for joining us. The reason why I'm bringing that up is I want to impress upon you how long this stuff has been around. Even though the FCRA has been updated a little bit over the years, it's been around for 51 years. Okay, and the reason why the FCRA was created was to really spell out what creditors are obligated to do. Now, I say creditors, the real term is data furnisher. But let's just call them creditors, data furnishers. You'll hear me interchange these names pretty frequently, so don't let that confuse you. And what it says largely is that the accounts on your credit report, they have to be accurate and they have to be verifiable. Another thing too is the burden of proof, the burden of performance, making sure that the information is accurate, making sure that it's all true, and also being able to verify it is the burden of the data furnisher / creditor. It's also a burden of the credit bureau. Ultimately, they're responsible for the data that's on your credit report. Now, even though the credit bureaus are really they're a middleman. They are a warehouse of data. They are a storage of data that sits in the cloud that's there when somebody wants to pull a credit report, whether it's you for your own purposes or a creditor, somebody else. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of people looking at our credit. Now, again, they look at our credit with our permission in most circumstances, but all of that information is just sitting there, and there's a lot of laws that protect us. Now, Villalobos, welcome. Good to have you. If you're late joining, if you have a question about Credit Versio, credit scores, anything, go ahead and post it. I will answer it as I'm going through this explanation. Now, what I'm talking about today is, for those of you who are joining us late, is what credit repair is and what credit repair is not. There's a lot of myth that surrounds it. Hold on, I got take a little sip of my water. I think probably I'm talking a little bit too fast, but I get excited. Every Wednesday we do these things. I really enjoy sharing this information because when you come to the Q&A lives, whether it's just me by myself or a guest or John, who's a frequent guest, we love explaining this information. It shows a lot of dedication on your part that you really want to improve your credit. You want to improve your circumstances. Okay, it looks like we might have a question already, so let's put a pause, a comma, on what I was talking about a second ago. And it says, hello, David, I'm new. Should I add a secured credit card to my credit report during the dispute process to begin boosting my credit? You certainly can. The only time where you really can't add a credit card is if you're in the process of filing bankruptcy. A lot of times, if you're in Chapter 13.2, you're doing debt restructure. In a Chapter 13, it's sometimes hard to get a credit card. You know, I was just having this conversation earlier today. Is it Amanswell? Hopefully I got that right. One of the things that I like even more than secured credit cards, I like things like Self. A secured credit card is great. If you think you can get a regular credit card, by all means, do that as well. Also, too, consider getting somebody to add you as an authorized user. That is probably my favorite credit shortcut. I was about to say credit hack, but in a couple minutes here, I'm going to really start saying a lot of bad stuff about anybody who's using the term credit hack, or shortcuts or angles or anything like that. And it's going to make sense in a second. So yes, for definitely Pawn, get yourself if it was a Pawn, yeah, Pawn, definitely get yourself a credit card if you don't have any. Ideally, you want to have a couple. And before you really start using those, make sure you watch the tutorials. Go into the tutorial section of Credit Versio, and there's a section called Credit Coaching. And in there, I do a video that explains how to use credit cards. Revolving credit, and please take this to the bank. This is a very serious thing right here. Revolving credit can make or break your credit score. Case in point, I had a great conversation with a young lady. I took the phones for a little while, I think Thursday or Friday last week. She called up, just curious why her credit score dropped. I think it was 84, 94 points. It was a big drop. When I see that, there's really only a couple of things that cause that. Number one, it's new derogatory information, but most of the time it's the second one, which is overutilization of credit. She had one credit card, and this is this is directed specifically to you. I'm sorry. This is Amswell. Yes, Pawn, I didn't put your question up, but I'll get to it in a second. A lot of questions are coming in. Okay. What I noticed is she had one credit card, $300 credit limit. The month before, she had just gotten it. It was brand new. And then the next credit report, she had utilized it to about 94%, dropped her score 84 points. So the reason why I'm telling you that, Pawn, is make sure you watch the video, the coaching videos, because I spent a little bit of time talking about how to use credit cards. Again, very important to understand how they work. Okay, JL. Hi, David. Sent round one out. Can't wait to see how this process goes. JL, I can't tell you how excited I am for you and for everybody using Credit Versio. I'll make the assumption that everybody on here is. What's so exciting now, this is a big change from when we launched. Okay, we've been around for about, 18 months now. We launched March of 2020. The Credit Versio today is way different than the Credit Versio of just 18 months ago. 18 months ago, we were making dispute suggestions based off of probability of deletion. And by the way, if you hire a credit repair company, that's the way they do it. They look at what you're disputing. Okay, let's call it a collection, and they have a playbook. You got a charge off, they have a playbook. Okay, the reason why I'm saying this, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, is I used to run or be a part of as a VP, one of the largest and most successful credit repair companies in the country before I came to Credit Versio. And we had a playbook. So we would look at the accounts, and we would just look at the data and say, okay, this is a charge off. Let's from Barclays, this is what we do. And that's what Credit Versio did. Highly successful, by the way. What's different about Credit Versio today is that the AI is now scanning your credit report just like it did before, but now it's looking for mistakes. It's looking for specific mistakes, and it can find 20 of them. So now when you are creating your disputes, that suggested reason, and if you've been in Credit Versio for maybe a couple of months, because this is all brand new stuff, you might have noticed the disputes have become more complex, more specific to the actual account. So JL, I'm very, very excited for you. Okay, Pon, I didn't skip your question. I was just about to get to it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're right. I did skip it. All right, let's bring it up now. Okay. When sending out a dispute, what else needs to be sent along with it? A copy of your photo ID and a copy of your social security card. Pon, make sure you go through your tutorial video, your quick start videos, because we cover this in video 1. To answer your question, you want to have your driver's license or some kind of state ID. Passport is perfectly fine if you don't have any of that. And a recent proof of address. So what's an acceptable proof of address? Pay stub, utility bill, insurance statement, bank statement. The reason why the bureaus want that is they know that those providers, that those entities that I just named, most likely did a credit check on you. So you were in, probably did some kind of credit check, you provided some kind of verification of your ID, and if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for the bureaus. Make sure your proof of address, Pon, is less than 60 days old. If it's older, 4 months, 6 months, whatever, if they don't have your current address on file, meaning if you've moved in the last 6 months and you haven't opened anything new, meaning there's no new inquiries where your new address might have ended up on your credit report, they might reply to your dispute saying, hey, Pon, we have no idea who you are. Why don't you supply us? And they'll give you a list of stuff to supply. Okay. All right, Mike. Mike is back. Good to see you again. So David, starting round 4, if the bureaus do not provide documentation, how they are verifying my account, should I lawyer up or wait 6 months and try the process over again? Mike, good question. That depends. And I think we might have had an email conversation back and forth about this. Correct me if I'm wrong. If the information on your credit report is grossly inaccurate, meaning if there's an error, if there's something wrong with it, and you've disputed that information, and you guys will hear me say, the best dispute reason is a custom reason. It's the reason, well, not always, not now with the new technology that Credit Versio has. But if you have a very specific reason as to why the account is not reporting correctly, then write a custom reason. And if the creditor and the bureaus are not correcting it, not responding, that's a mistake. That's an error. That's something that should come off. But if it doesn't, and this stuff happens all the time. If you've seen the lives that I've done with John Alzheimer, he comes on the second and last Wednesday of every month with me. John is the most prolific. He is the most requested and hired credit expert witness in the country. 500 cases he's been retained on. He gave some stats a couple of Q&A lives ago saying that over 12,000 lawsuits are filed every year against the bureaus and against data furnishers. And that number is going up. So mistakes happen. And if that's the case, then reach out to an attorney. If you want a recommendation, we know a ton of them. Just drop me an email or reach out to support and we'll get you a name. The great thing is they don't charge anything. Their fees are paid by the data furnisher and the bureau. So it's probably one of the only times you can hire an attorney where they're not going to charge anything. Okay, thanks for the question, Mike. Okay, Love 8 Spell, welcome from Texas. Timothy, welcome. Good to have you here. Pon, skip the question. Yes. Answer. Okay, very good. And let's see. Love 8 Spell. Hello, David. Y'all dispute bankruptcies off Lexus Nexus. Okay. It's very difficult to dispute a bankruptcy. Okay. Lexus Nexus is, let me back up a little bit. The credit bureaus, all the data that you see on your credit report is supplied by data furnishers. Your Barclays account, your Ford, your Wells Fargo, your Discover card, your Amex. All of that information is given to the bureaus. The bureaus go out and get information only for one type of an account. That's a public record. Okay, that is your Lexus Nexus and your Sagestream. It doesn't, you can dispute, say, Lexus Nexus if you want to. That's an entirely different thing. They have different protocols. It is completely different than what Credit Versio is going to do. Credit Versio is bureau-based. It's importing digital credit reports from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Now, if you're going to dispute it with the bureaus. There's no advantage to going and disputing it with Lexus Nexus. I mean, I've heard it done before. They're inherently unsuccessful unless there is a very clear error on the account, error on the bankruptcy. Also, too, just to save you the question, Love 8 Spell, because I know it's coming, does it help to freeze your Lexus Nexus account and your Sagestream account when you're disputing your bankruptcy with the bureaus? The answer is no. This is one of the biggest myths that for whatever reason continues to persist. Probably because there's just not a lot of knowledge when it comes to how things work when you're disputing things. All that freezing your account does is it provides a creditor from looking at that account. So if I were to log on to my Experian app and if I were to freeze my account, nobody can look at my Experian account. No creditor can, but I can see it. And if I was doing repair through Credit Versio and I was using, say, Smart Credit or Identity IQ, they could still bring in the credit report. It doesn't stop contractors from seeing your data. So you could freeze Sagestream and Lexus Nexus all you want. It will not prevent the bureaus from getting access to it. That is 100% myth, and I probably talk about that myself and John, who is my co-host twice a month. Probably every other live we do, somebody asks that question. Okay. Chris Johnson, how do we email you? support@creditversio.com. It's all over our website, right at the very bottom. You can also call. The number here is 702-930-3903. So if you're in the process of dispute or if you have some questions, you can email us or you can call us. Either one will do. Okay, Mike, thanks, David. Just trying not to get down about some things. You know, Mike, I get it. I came to this whole industry in 2012 as a credit repair client. Some people have heard me tell my story before. If you haven't heard it, I know some new people here. When I came here as a client, not to Credit Versio, but to another company, I had a bunch of real estate. I was one of those guys that owned a bunch of property, over leveraged, bad decisions, definitely greedy with a lot of stuff, and things we all know what happened in 2008, 9, and 10. Things went pretty south. But by the time I recovered in 2012, I was really surprised that the company that did my repair was very successful, statistically about the same as Credit Versio. I got about 30-40% of the items deleted, and the rest was just elbow grease, Mike. I put in the work. I learned how credit works. I made smart choices. I got added as an authorized user, and eventually the old stuff just dropped off. It's been a long time now, so it's fallen off. But it didn't have to fall off for me to get a great credit score. I was in the 800s, I would say, a year and a half, maybe 2 years after the credit repair process. So listen, I realize we all want this done yesterday. It's not easy to recover from challenge credit, especially if you're starting from scratch, which was me. I mean, I had everything went south. Everything was bad credit. If I didn't have bad credit on my credit report, I'd have no credit. That's what it was like back in 2012. Okay. Let's see. JL. David, I hear a lot of so-called credit repair gurus say never sign your dispute letters with a wet signature to the credit bureaus. Don't have any ammunition against you with the data furnishers. So, JL, this is one of the things I'm going to, if I get to it, I'm getting a lot of questions, which is awesome. And hopefully I get to this part of what I had prepared. Where a lot of these bad ideas come from in credit repair is that there aren't fact checkers. Meaning, when you have tens of millions of people who have very little to no knowledge about how credit works, and then they get themselves in a bad situation, whether it's a job loss or illness, or maybe they just didn't really understand the ramifications of not paying things on time. When people come to the credit repair space, they are emotional, for sure, because they don't understand, they're overwhelmed with information, they don't know who to listen to, and they're being judged. They're being judged because their credit report, as I said in the beginning of this live, our credit report has become our adult report card. Whether you wanted to or not, or agree with it or not, that's the world that we live in today. So fact checkers like myself, like the guys that are on our team that were with FICO, with Equifax, with TransUnion, we don't get into debates with these people online. There's a great, I'm half comical with this, but there's a great quote from Mark Twain. And he says, "Don't get into a public debate with an idiot. Onlookers might not be able to tell the difference." So that's why we don't really engage a lot of this bad information. The only thing that I can tell you is that the dispute, there are no hustles, there are no special tricks, there are no things like what you're talking about, don't sign your dispute letter. That has nothing to do with anything. Of course, sign your dispute letter. Bureaus, contrary to what you hear from these talking heads out here who shouldn't be talking about credit, is the bureaus are really on your side. I've had John on here. Used to work for FICO. He was with Equifax for years. I've had Steve Rieger. Now, if you're watching from our YouTube channel, you can scroll down and you can see an interview I did with Steve Rieger. He was with TransUnion for 25 years. Ran the entire dispute division, 15,000 disputes every single day. This was his kingdom. And one of the things that he said is, "Hey, we want to get this information right. We want to help people get the information right." So tricks like, signing things in blue or stapling the letters or, quoting the law, none of that stuff matters. You could literally send a dispute on a cocktail. I'm looking around my desk like I got a cocktail napkin. You could send a dispute on a cocktail napkin and they would respond to it. That's just the way it works. Okay. Let's see. Chris, cool. Thanks, because I'm ready to start suing. Hey, listen, you got to do what you got to do. If you got mistakes on your credit report, you got to do it. I did it myself. I filed a lawsuit against Equifax and Ocwen about 7 years ago because out of the blue they put, like I said earlier, I was one of those guys that owned a lot of property. One of the accounts that got deleted from my credit report was an Ocwen second mortgage. And in California, where I was from, second mortgages are subordinate to the first. They can't come after you. It was deleted and it popped back on. I gave them 2 dispute letters, which I really didn't have to, and I handed over to my attorney, and we went to court. It didn't go to trial. We just went to like a mediation with the judge, and they stroked me a nice fat check. So sometimes it happens that way. Okay, jail again. Also, if that's true, driver's licenses have a wet signature on them. So it's not true. When you do your dispute letters, send a copy of your driver's license. If you got one, ID, passport, doesn't matter. Wet signatures, that's a complete myth. And I love to myth bust, and I'll do that all day long. And by the way, great advice. Thanks, David JL. You are very welcome. Let me just step back, and I want to frame some of this for you, especially for you, JL, and those who are watching who are maybe have some of these myths in mind. When I got into the credit repair business, I was very lucky to get in with a guy who owned the company, was very, very knowledgeable, great guy. And the whole team was fantastic. And one of the things that was very interesting is there was a lot of stuff that we believed. Like we would cite the laws in the dispute letter, threaten to sue, and we'd say, here's the case law. You can't do this. You can't do that. I mean, it was very adversarial, and that's the way a lot of credit repair companies operate. And we would staple the letters on the side because we know that the machines that scan the letters can't take those, and somebody has to physically undo that kind of stapling nonsense. And we did that for a long time for one reason, not because we had any insider knowledge. We didn't know anybody who worked at the bureaus. We got that from another credit repair guy who got it from another credit repair guy who got it from another guy who probably wrote a book or had a seminar or somehow passed his bad ideas in exchange for our good money, until we met a guy who actually worked at the credit bureaus, and the aforementioned Steve Rieger. And we sat down with him, and he's like, why are you guys are clowns. You don't need to do all this stuff. Forget the blue ink and citing the laws and this. I mean, he went off on a laundry list. He's like, by the way, we always know they're coming from a credit repair company because you guys are the only ones that write crazy letters like that. It's the easiest letters. Simple. I know a lot of you have seen the credit Versio letters. They're simple. The reason why they're simple is because that's what the bureaus want. They want the account number, they want the creditor, and they want the dispute in one line, maybe 2 lines. I mean, write more if you need to tell a little bit of a story, but it doesn't need to be a long dispute letter. It just doesn't need to. Success comes down to having them open an investigation. That's the trick. So here's the funny part. Once we heard him tell us that, I mean, he really kind of read us the riot act, but in a friendly way. We ended up working together, which is why he was sharing this with us. We changed our letters. We shortened them. We did what he said. And you know what happened? Same results. Same results. Okay. So what we learned is all of that stuff we were putting in those letters, pages of quoting the law. We did that. What we learned, or what I learned, is that we did that to impress the client, to make them feel like we were doing something for them, that we were working for them. When the reality is, we didn't need to do all that stuff, and we got the same exact result. Okay, very good. Keep shooting your questions my way. I'm happy to answer them. Okay, now getting back to what I was talking about a second ago. When you're in the dispute process, any account can be deleted if and only if it's not reporting correctly. Now, when you send a dispute, what happens is the Bureau opens up an investigation, and they send that dispute electronically. It's called ACDV, automatic AD. It's been a while since I've said this one. Automatic Credit Dispute Verification. So it's an electronic dispute that goes over to the data furnisher, and it tells them, hey, the end user, the consumer, is disputing this account. And that's what opens up the investigation. One of the expectations, and in fact, I just saw a post on one of our Facebook videos a little while ago. Somebody said, hey, I'm in my second round, and I've only got a couple of things deleted. I don't know how to feel about this. So where the miscommunication is, where the misunderstanding is, dispute does not equal deletion. It can result in a deletion, but it doesn't guarantee a deletion. The only accounts that are not reporting accurately, so they got to be accurate. In fact, here's the language of the law. This is under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Account cannot be erroneous, outdated, incomplete, or unverifiable. Now, the fact of the matter is, most accounts get deleted from credit reports because they're unverifiable. The creditor / data furnisher, a lot of times, for whatever reason, just does not have the time, energy, money, interest in replying to disputes. Now, if you point out an error, a real mistake, which is what Credit Versio is doing now, which is shocking as far as how many we're finding. 97% of credit reports that Credit Versio processes on a daily basis has at least one error, something on it that not all of them are score killers, but all of them are something that couldn't be disputed that should be removed. So that's very, very impressive as far as what the software is doing. So just because you dispute it doesn't mean it's coming off. Only accounts that are inaccurate, unverifiable, and the third part of that component is the data furnisher / creditor is not able to fix it. So when you send a dispute, so like Mike, we were talking earlier, if you're disputing things and the creditor comes back and they're like, oh yeah, you got us, this was a mistake, let me fix this. They have the option to fix it. That's what a dispute is for. Now, of course, if you've got derogatory information, you've got charge-offs, collections, late payments, maybe a repo or something like that, yeah, you don't want them to fix it. You want them to get it deleted. But you don't really have a say in the matter. You are launching a dispute. You're pointing out what you believe to be wrong about it. If there's no error that Credit Versio finds, it's going to give you a suggested reason based on probability. What is the what is likely to be the most effective dispute reason for this type of account. That's what Credit Versio is going to serve up in the absence of an error. Okay, so deletions come from inaccuracies and unverifiable data. And that this is again, it's been around for 51 years. Nothing has really changed. Okay. By the way, if you're liking the information, you guys, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if this is good stuff, that you're liking it, and helps the videos to rank and everything. You guys all know that, I'm sure. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is the dispute process is about finding mistakes and errors on your credit report and disputing them. Okay, that's all this is about. There are no magical dispute letters. They don't have to be. All you have to do is to open an investigation. And like I said a second ago, Credit Versio is now capable of finding 20 different mistakes, errors, and discrepancies on a credit report. So the reason why I like to bring that up is when there's an absence of real knowledge as to how all of this works, we fall prey to bad information. Case in point, I had a conversation with a lady last week. It was a long conversation. I happened to pick up the phone. I think everybody was all tied up, so I picked up the phone. I love talking to people about this. And I got a lady who, by the way, it was the same one I told you about. It was the one whose score had dropped. And she was about to pay $2,000 to some self-proclaimed credit expert on how to delete anything from your credit report. Okay, first of all, it's a pretty big red flag. You can't just delete anything from a credit report. There has to be cause. And it was also credit education. And what I want to tell you, and again, please take this to heart, you should never pay for anything. Okay, there are no special techniques. I see people buying template letters. You can buy, if you don't want to use Credit Versio, if you don't want to pay the $19 to get a smart credit account, more power to you. That's fine. Log in, create a free account. Just bypass the part where it asks you to link a credit report or create a new one, and go to the free section and go into templates. All the templates to dispute. Now, they're not specific. There's no AI involved. There's no software involved. These are the same templates that you can download from the FTC and the CFPB. Okay, a lot of disputes that go into the bureaus are based off of templates. Nothing wrong with that. Don't need to buy templates. Templates that are quoting the law, that have like special techniques, and these are tried and true. Nonsense. And this is coming from a guy who's helped tens of thousands of clients, millions of disputes, and now with Credit Versio, it's millions of disputes. And what we're watching is simple work. So I just want to give you some encouragement that credit repair it's not, there's no angles to it. There's nothing really complex about it. Okay, everything is based on the laws, and the laws have been around since the 1970s. Okay, it's not complex stuff. Okay, I want to give a little bit of a little plug here. Again, if you've been with me the whole time on this live, you've heard me talk about how Credit Versio can now find up to 20 errors on a credit report. It does that by comparing all three bureaus to each other. Now, you might not know this, but Credit Versio, just to begin with, sees a lot more data than we do. You and I see a PDF, an HTML PDF. It's called it's not really a credit report, even though we call it credit reports. It's called a credit disclosure, a consumer credit disclosure. It's very limited information. Credit Versio doesn't get that. Credit Versio gets a full, it's called a JSON code. It's a massive code. So it sees more on our credit report than what you and I see. So it has an easier time finding mistakes, finding things that are wrong. It's comparing Experian, Equifax, TransUnion to each other on every single account. And then it's going back in time. So if you have 2 or 3 credit reports in your Credit Versio account, Credit Versio is scanning all of them. Every single time a new credit report comes in, it scans every single account, literally thousands of data points, looking for mistakes. One of the coolest things that we see is when Credit Versio finds duplicates. We had a guy, my partner here, David. We have 3 Davids in this office, which is pretty interesting. David was showing me that there was a duplicate, a charge-off from a credit union. It was on there twice. Once as a revolving account. That's what it was. It was a revolving account. But then somehow it popped up as an unknown account. So it was 3 pages down. Like if you and I were looking at a credit report, like a paper credit report or a PDF credit report, all we would know is that it was 2 different charge-offs. Well, Credit Versio using matching logic can tell that, oh, this is the same as this, even though the account number was different. There were so many other data points that Credit Versio sees where it realized that that was a duplicate. By the way, that's a violation of the law. That person could sue the credit bureaus without doing anything else. That would have been a big lawsuit. But in this case, Credit Versio already wrote the dispute reason, letting them know that this is a duplicate. The reason why I'm bringing that up is, again, like you've heard me mention, the company that I was with for 7.5 years, white glove credit repair company, very expensive, very thorough, very good. I had 25 processors that worked overseas. All they did, and by the way, that's common. Every credit repair company that is white glove that's doing processing, most of the people are overseas. Nothing wrong with that. They would not have caught this. There is no way in the world that they would have caught that duplicate, but the software does. And that's just absolutely remarkable. Okay, let's see. JL, another question looks like, does Credit Versio know if the bureaus didn't send proof that they verified a dispute after a round of dispute after it was requested? No, it doesn't. It doesn't know what the credit bureaus do. All what Credit Versio understands is the credit report itself. What happens outside of the credit report, it doesn't know. Because what the bureaus, how they responded is not on the credit report apart from any changes that took place. So if an account was deleted, if it was modified, if it was modified means repaired. For example, if you had late payments on an otherwise good account and the late payments were deleted, that's a modification. So it understands that. It understands any change that takes place between 2, 3, or 4 credit reports. But what happens on the outside, if they mailed you something, there's no way. I mean, we don't know that either. Only you would know that. Okay. Pon, my middle name is David. Hey, great. If you worked here, we'd have 4 Davids in the office. Excellent. Okay. You're going to hear me harp on this a little bit more. Let me check our time here. We're 40 minutes. Okay, so we got a few more minutes. So I want to impress upon you that no special techniques, no special templates are required. There are no special codes. When I see, and I was just having this conversation with my partner earlier, that one of the things that makes me cringe is when I see, and I get this. I understand it's just salesmanship and it's excitement is trying to get people to buy. I get that. But when you see things in the credit repair space like we crack the credit bureau code, or how to game the credit bureaus, or how to trick, or whatever, none of that stuff is true. Okay, it does not exist. Imagine if that person that I talked to the other day would have spent $2,000 and gotten something that she could have gotten free. The templates are in Credit Versio. As far as the credit education goes, it's free. If you're watching from YouTube, if you want to learn how credit works, we have an entire program there. It's taught by myself, John Olsheimer, who is right now and has been for many, many years the #1 credit expert in the country. Nobody's ever been interviewed or quoted or published as much as he has. He was with FICO and he's with Equifax, and he's on our payroll. And he's the guy that writes most of our articles, does all of our videos. So if you want to know how everything works, it's free. We give it to you free. Okay? Please, please, please don't pay people for this information. It's completely unnecessary. Okay, Pon, we're coming down to the end of our live. So if you got a question, listen, no question's a dumb question. If you're holding out because you're not sure if it's a good question, just ask it. This is a secure environment. I won't mention anything if it's a silly question. Trust me. No, I've got the market cornered on silly questions when I was first coming to credit repair. How many rounds of disputes is there? There are 4. Can you go over more than 4? What if there is no inaccuracy? How would you get rid of that negative? Okay, so upon just a little bit of straight up honesty for you. If the Credit Versio of now, and even the Credit Versio of a couple of months ago, that it's driven by looking for mistakes, errors, violations, deviations, discrepancies between bureaus. If you go 4 rounds and that account continues to come back verified, it's verified. Okay, it means it's not coming off. You're not going to, in all the tens of thousands of accounts that I've supervised in the almost 9 years I've been in this business, I've seen 100% deletions. They happen very, very rarely. Because again, like I said earlier upon, the only reason for anything to ever be deleted from a credit report is if it's wrong, if it's inaccurate, erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. Okay, those are the 4. And really what you're relying on is that unverifiable. But that doesn't describe all the accounts on the credit report. Some of them are just flat out going to come back as verified, and there they will stay for the full 7 years. That's the reality. I had a lot of my accounts stay and drop off the full 7 years. I remember it too. I remember like looking at, I think the last one to fall off was like an Amex card. And I remember looking at it going, man, what's my score going to do when this thing falls off? Truth of the matter is it did nothing. My score didn't change at all, largely because after about 24 to 36 months, a lot of this stuff on your credit report really doesn't have much in the way of teeth in it anymore. If you've been building good credit, if you've been doing a good job, you kept your nose clean, you know, you're not overextending yourself on your credit cards. If you're doing everything right, these negative accounts play less and less and less of a role as time goes by. By the time you're at 5 years, 6 years, I wouldn't stress over this stuff. Your good credit it should be strong enough to lift you. And if it's not, then again, go through that credit coaching course. There's probably some stuff you're not aware of that you can do to help build your credit. Okay, let's see. Oh, and Paul, just to expand on that a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up. I got one more question on here. So you really have 3 options when an account does not come off after you've gone through 4 rounds of disputes. You know, Credit Versio might pick up an error on round 5, and you can tell it'll say error, or it will say error in a couple of weeks. Right now, it'll just give you a more complex, detailed dispute, and you can tell when you select that dispute reason, and it's several sentences long. It's a little bit more than the standard suggested reason. Do you know that's a specific dispute written for that account? If you're not seeing that at round 5, then you're done. Go ahead and call it a day. And here's what I would do. 3 options. Number 1, wait 6 months. Wait 6 months and keep your fingers crossed. Sometimes original creditors will archive their data. The older accounts get, sometimes the easier they are to get deleted. So that's option number 1. Just wait 6 months, try again. Option number 2. If you got outstanding debt, like with third-party collection companies, not with original creditors, but with collection companies, negotiate it, settle it. You might they might delete it in exchange for payment. That's not what they're supposed to do, but a lot of them are doing it right now. With your original creditor, do the same thing too. Pennies on the dollar. You can settle a lot of debt right now for pennies on the dollar. It's a good feeling, you know, if it's in your budget, if you can pull it off, you know, settle the debt. It ends that uncomfortable and unpleasant relationship that you have with a creditor and a debt collector. You know, you don't want to get those calls or that email. You don't want that stuff to continue to show as a balance owed on your credit report. It doesn't look good. Okay, that's option 2. Settle the debt if you can. Option number 3, like I mentioned before, wait it out. 7 years. Everything gets better with time. Okay. Hello, Esmir. Welcome. Okay, you're coming in right at the very end. But if you have a question, post it. A lot of people watch these videos, the replay of the video, and ask and post their questions. I'm happy to answer them. Okay, started a year ago in the 500s with Credit Versio, and now Equifax 689, TransUnion 711, Experian 692. Let me pop that back up there. Thank you very much for the knowledge. I'm now stuck. Nothing left to fix. How do I increase scores? JB, have you gone through the credit coaching videos in Credit Versio? They're also, I see you're posting from YouTube. All you have to do is just pull up our channel on YouTube, and you'll see there's a section called, I think it's called Credit Coaching. I'm pretty sure it's Credit Coaching. You can't miss it. It's a blue background with me talking. There's 11, maybe 12 videos. Go through those. And also on creditversio.com, not your portal, but just regular creditversio.com, you're going to see a section that says Credit Coaching that's relatively new, about maybe 2 months old. And we've got a lot of great articles from John Alzheimer, some videos from him. I'll tell you, I wish we had this information presented so organically, so beautifully and thoroughly when I started in credit repair in 12 years ago, or started my credit repair journey. This stuff is laid out so nice. Go through it. I promise you, you're going to learn a lot about how credit works. Okay? For you, it's probably just needing to rebuild. And again, time heals. Okay? Nothing heals like time. Okay, last question. Lisette, what are your thoughts on Goodwill letters? I love Goodwill letters, but you gotta use them under very specific circumstances. I see people using Goodwill letters incorrectly all the time. Okay, here is the proper condition for the use of a Goodwill letter. Goodwill letters are good for late payment history only, not for collections, not for charge-offs, not for repos, not for BKs, nothing else, just late payments. Here are the conditions. You have to have had a good payment history up for a while, up to a point where something happened. Maybe it was COVID. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you got sick, whatever the case may be. So you have a period of time of default. And then you catch up. You're back paying your payments on time. So good history, a little hiccup here, back to honoring your financial obligation with your creditor. That is when you send a Goodwill letter. And now, by the way, this is a proactive process, Lisette. You can't just send a letter and, fire and forget. It doesn't work that way. You got to get on the phone, call them, say, hey, listen, here's the story. I paid everything on time. You got to get a hold of a manager or a general manager or somebody who's an authority at that bank or that institution. Believe me, they understand the Goodwill letter process. Every company gets them. They get them en masse. So this is not anything new to them. They're not going to be confused by it. But send the letter first and follow up. Say, hey, listen, I'm a great client. I had a period of time. You can see I paid everything on time. This is what happened. And then now I'm back on track. Lisette, if you haven't got into, whether you've got a Credit Versio account or not, doesn't matter. Go create a free account if you don't have one. Go into the template section. And there is a Goodwill letter template right there for you. The most important part of that template letter are the instructions. So there's a very specific way that you want to word a Goodwill letter and how to follow up. It's all right there for you. You can have it for free. If you don't have a Credit Versio account, if you don't want a Credit Versio account, that's okay. Just skip the part that asks you to connect a 3-bureau credit report. There's a little skip. Go past that. You're in your free Credit Versio account and go into templates. It's under tutorials. It's hidden there. But go under tutorials and then you'll see templates. If you have any questions, email us at support@creditversio.com, or you can comment back on this and I'll see it and answer it. Okay, last one. I will watch replay later. By the way, I watched all of your videos on this channel. I signed up for Credit Versio. I'm sending my first round dispute letters this Friday. Asmir, great job. Congratulations and good luck to you. It's exciting to see somebody really being proactive with their credit. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. If you have any questions, support@creditversio.com, or you can post it right here on YouTube, Facebook. I'm more than happy to answer them. I keep an eye on these all throughout the day. When I see a question come in, I'll make sure I take care of it. Okay, next Wednesday. Go ahead, Lisette. I'll grab that. You have a Credit Versio account, I think is what you're saying. Okay, I thought you had one last question. Next Wednesday, I will have with me John Alzheimer, America's #1 credit expert, and I think we're going to talk about authorized users and ideal authorized user conditions. So don't miss that. And if you have any questions you'd like us to answer in that live, feel free to send them to support@creditversio.com or post them right here, and I'll make sure that we get to them. Thank you so much for joining me today. You guys have been great. Thanks for the questions. Awesome questions today. I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Take care.